Well, I ended up getting this car back. I built this thing about 8 years ago. There's a bunch of videos of me drag racing it and stuff on my YouTube channel. I ended up selling it about 4 years ago to a good friend of mine. He didn't do much with it, and he had a really, really nice wagon. So I kind of, I had some unfinished business with this car, so I made a deal with him to do an LS swap on his wagon, and I would get this car back in return. So it was definitely, it's definitely been interesting going back to it. I put this thing together about 8 years ago when I did things a lot differently with cars, and it definitely shows. Definitely shows. It needed it needed a lot of work. When he got it, a fuel hose burst on it. This was back in 2020, and he basically never drove it. But with the times that he did drive it, it felt like a dog. In this car, for some reason, I hurt the 6-liter in it last time I went drag racing. For some reason, I put an aluminum 5.3 in it, really nice cam, springs, everything. And the car just never felt right ever since I did that. It never made power. You couldn't rev it out like you could with the 6-liter. Like, I tried messing with the tune a lot. I redid just about everything I could think of, sensors, maybe reading bias, whatever. Tried adding, subtracting timing, adding, subtracting fuel. Nothing seemed to work on it. And so it just kind of sat. And, every now and then it would feel okay, but it just never felt 100% right. So I got it back, and I wanted to get it back to where it should be, as what I thought. So I'll just show you some of the stuff I've done. I won't talk much about the engine just yet. So I have converted this thing to the 82 and newer front end because I have 3 Scotia 240s that all have this front end on it now. So if I crash any of them, whatever, as you'll see in a second, they all interchange. So it makes it really nice. So I have redone the entire engine bay on this thing, the entire cooling system. Intercooler is going to be a big topic of discussion here. So as you can see, I have 3-inch pipes on it now. I had 2.5-inch before. I had a gigantic throttle body on it. So I have this GTX 4202R ball bearing turbo, and this thing would not make any boost under 3,000 RPM. You could floor it. It would take about 3 seconds to get into boost, and I could pin the wastegate shut. I could do everything. It just would not. Air fuel ratios look perfect. I send the log to everybody that I know that is familiar with tuning these things, and Mega Squirt in particular, and everything looked good. It just was a freaking dog. I decided that there's something mechanically wrong with the engine, is what it didn't have any excessive blow by, nothing, but something, like cam timing, whatever, something was just off. So I started doing, real simple things. The first thing I did was I unhooked the intercooler, and I just basically felt the air pressure at idle coming out of the turbocharger, and I felt the amount of air that the intake was trying to suck in. So, okay, that's good. There's a ton of volume coming out of that turbo. I hooked the so now that I know what the turbo felt like just at idle, I hooked up the intercooler on the turbo side, and it is nothing coming out of the other side of the intercooler. It is barely anything. Like you could barely feel any air coming out of there. So I was just like, well, this intercooler has been in the car since I built it. It is this, and I'm just like baffled as why now? Well, why was the 5.3 the catalyst that made this car a dog? I started looking back at all the drag racing videos and everything that I did with this car, and this car was never as fast as it should have been, in my opinion, with the gear ratio and everything that it had in it. And I'm not an experienced drag racer, I'm not a good tuner, but I know enough to get myself in trouble. So I just look back and I'm like, you know what, this thing has definitely been an issue before. And the car had a stock cam in it, a stock LS1 intake, stock valve springs, and an S366 cast clone in the 6-liter. And it ran, I think, 123 miles in the quarter at like 11.3 with like a really slow 60 foot, because this thing had a really tight converter. Well, turns out it wasn't making any power now, so I couldn't really get it up on the converter. So I did a 228, 230 sloppy stage 2 cam. I did a Trailblazer SS intake. I did a 102 throttle body on it. And then I swapped to this GTX 4202R. And the car, and I ran more boost. I ran 3 pounds more boost at the track, and the car picked up 2 miles an hour. So I look back on that now and I'm like, man, how did I not notice that? So anyway, sorry to ramble. Took the intercooler out. I measured it. It was about 9 inches tall, 21 inches wide, and had 2.5 inch inlet and outlet and tanks. It was 2.5 inches wide and thick. So I got a piece of 2.5 inch exhaust tubing and I put it in there, and at 5 pounds of boost, this car has never been as fast as it was just putting that piece of exhaust tubing in there. So obviously that intercooler was just a massive restriction. I measured the inside, the cast end tanks on that thing. It was about a 1.8 inch inner diameter on those pipes. So it just was strangling this engine. So now we are where we are at today. After I found that out, took it down the street, I was like, man, this thing is great. It's never felt this fast. And then I got T-boned right there. But no worries. I got a door and a rear quarter panel that we're just gonna put on this thing. It's a rusty car. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just, I really liked, what I liked about this thing is that this body was just dead straight, even though it's very rusty on the outside. On the body panels, it is very rusty. On the floor, it is perfect. I've never had a 240 with as little rust underneath as this thing. Somehow it survived. So I just started working on it. I left the smaller throttle body on there, but I swapped that out thinking that might have been an issue, but it didn't change anything. It did help a little bit with drivability. I switched, to one of these Chinese ICT billet knockoff brackets. So I could put a bigger alternator on there. Just, get more voltage in the system and make it a little bit more happy. I changed over. I swapped everything off the firewall and I put it down, up off the top right here, and I put it down here, the regulator and everything. And as you can see, I just blasted holes here. This is a drag car now, so I'm just, whatever. It doesn't need to be pretty, and so I was able to get a really easy run on the 3-inch pipes to fit everything. Gotta put a Miata battery in it and made a small little tray out of angle iron. Cleaned up all the wiring right here. Everything is it's not perfect, but it is a million times better than what I had done a long time ago. It just shows that you can improve. I put this thing always had overheating issues with that C4 radiator. Well, it's another dumb mistake I made. I looked inside that radiator core, and man, that had a transmission cooler built into it, and that damn transmission cooler took up about, I don't know, 75% of the end tank on one side. So I got one of these Be Cool Boneyard LSX swap radiators. I got a 07 style truck pump, and you know, I'm just running it dual pass. I got a Mr. Gasket adjustable thermostat housing, and just ran a straight flex hose down to the lower part. I cut the lower radiator support out like I've been starting to do on these cars, because you can just fit a gigantic radiator in them, and then they actually don't overheat and have issues, especially with the turbo. You can move them forward quite a bit. So I just made up a, you know, cheap bracket there to hold it for the time being, just to test the car out and everything. As far as the intercooler situation goes, and I put a 40K transmission cooler in here that I had. It was banged up from a warranty claim. F-150s had these stock on them, by the way. So warranty claim that they didn't want the parts back. You see it's a little bit banged up. They were I forget what they're complaining about, but so now there's the intercooler. It is a 4-inch core. There's the piping going up too. It's a 4-inch core intercooler. 4-inch, 14 inches tall, 31 inches wide. And this thing has amazing intake air temps, even with the intercooler being hidden like that. So because I thought that the engine was toast, I had already bought another car to get the engine out of, and well, sure enough, that 5.3 was totally fine. It had a Lil Jon Motorsports Stage 2 turbo cam in it. It had, you know, double valve springs. It had all the good stuff. It should have, you know, it was just totally fine. And, you know, looking back on it, I probably should have just continued and you know, kept going with it, but I didn't. I got a 6-liter instead. I got an LQ4 out of a 06 Denali. I got the whole car in trade. Basically, it was about $300 it cost me, and I got a whole Denali out of it. And so this, I don't know what the miles are on it. The cluster never worked. The car never ran, but you know what? It turned over fine. I cranked it on the starter. It had even compression. I wasn't really worried about it. It was very clean. I took the whole engine apart, degreased everything. I put just LS6 valve springs in it. I put a Truck Norris cam in it, and I left the intake, everything, you know, already ready to go like that. So this thing is actually, it's really fun. It's really fun with that. I kind of liked the small cam and turbo feel. It was just, it's a great street car. It's a great street car. No lag whatsoever. But you know what? The issue is now it has zero traction. So that's the next thing I got to work on a little bit. I stripped. It looks exactly the same in here. It just has kind of crappy seats in it for right now. But I stripped all the heater core stuff out of it. The heater hoses used to come up through here. Now I have them running to the turbo. So it still is in a constant loop right off of the water pump, the way those things want to be. So as far as the heater core and all the wiring goes on this thing, what I've done to make it a little bit easier, gotten rid of all the stuff right there. So it's kind of hard to see, but back there is where I put the gold box and the fuse panel and everything. Yeah. It makes it really nice. There is a direct ground point to the engine and the chassis back there. There is a direct power source from the alternator and the battery back there. And it's all fused and everything, so it's all ready to go. Been working on the cold start a little bit on it. It's been a bit of a learning process for me with it. because there's no blow-off valve on it now, and it seemed to idle a lot better with that thing. I just need to reacquaint myself with Megasquirt, and like I said, not a professional by any means, but I can usually figure things out. So I actually ended up re-drilling this car to 5x114 in the front. It has the 8.8 in the back, so that one is already 5x114. But yeah, so now I'm running these Vision wheels, and I have converted it to SN95 front calipers, which are way lighter than the Volvo calipers, and you can find them everywhere. They're just, I just want to keep it as simple and as easy to maintain as possible. This engine comes out very easy the way that I have it set up right now. And I did that for a reason. It's gonna blow up. This isn't my only car anymore. This isn't my daily driver anymore, so I'm not afraid of blowing it up. I did put a single billet 2800 stall torque converter in it, and that it's really nice. It's a very nice unit. It's a Jegs unit, and man, it woke the car up quite a bit, and it feels nice. It's still so drivable in this thing. Then also, speaking of Jeg stuff, I switched to some longer travel coilovers on it. As you can see right there, those are some quote-unquote Jegs coilovers. They are Strange Engineering coilovers. Just a spoiler alert. You can get those for about $500 on sale, which is really, really cheap. They have 100-pound, 14-inch springs in them right now. A buddy of mine says that I should try to get it under 100 pounds and then get some coilovers, you know, for the front with some really soft springs in it too, to get it to, you know, rise up quite a bit when it leaves. There's some guys working on some anti-squat stuff for these things too, so I am all ears, you know, and I want to try all the new stuff and support, you know, the community that wants to support these cars. It's, you know, there's not a lot of people left, and, you know, a lot of the guys, you know, that are good friends of mine that, you know, I have STS Machining. Those guys always help me out with everything, and, you know, as far as getting parts and stuff, and, you know, they usually have everything in stock. You know, Yoshi Fab has been really good to me. You know, even I don't buy much from Ben, because he kind of caters to a little bit different audience than what I am into, but the stuff that I have bought from him in the past, I've had great luck with for the most part. And, you know, it's nice to see that these cars are becoming, you know, like a good, you know, drag race alternative platform. So yeah, that on this thing, that is about it for it. I definitely have a ton more work to do. After I replace this quarter panel and the door right there, I'm going to do quite a bit more to it and just refine it, you know, remove some of the stuff I did when I was younger, and, you know, which I've gotten rid of most of it, and I have cleaned it up quite a bit, so it definitely is a lot nicer now than it used to be. But yeah, other than that, that's the update for right now. And yeah, I will come back with hopefully some drag racing videos of it. As you can see, still working on it. It's getting better. It's a little grumpy on first cold start, but man, that motor has amazing oil pressure for a stock oil pump. Now voltage is a lot higher than it used to be. This sucker used to only get to about 13 for some reason, at least on the gauge. I didn't verify much on the computer. but I've been getting it a lot better. This thing has always been a very quiet car.